I'm here today with Andreas of Cabal to talk about Magno Interitos. I probably mispronounced the title of the record, but it's
I probably do too. So,
so let me ask you this: why did you pick a title of a record that it's so hard to pronounce, even for you?
because it sounded cool. That's honestly the truth. I was listening to some band. I was revisiting a Black Tongue album, and they have this one song on the second record where they like go into Latin and do like the Domino Satanas. So I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. I like Latin. That's cool language. It sounds so hard. So I'm like, I'm gonna find something cool. And like, I was thinking about calling like the album The Great Decay, and I just tried to translate it into Latin to see what that was, and it was Magno Interitus, I guess is how to say it. I was like, that sounds really cool, so I'm going with it.
So that okay, at least now we know where the title of the record came from, because I was like, wow, this is a tongue twister of a title of a record, but I get the point. You're just trying to be cool. You're just trying to be different.
Like
that's what it boils down to. So when it comes to this new album from Cabal, what do you feel sets this record apart from the two predecessors?
I feel like we experimented a bit more in this one. I feel like I say that every time, but that should be kind of like the case every time you make a new record. You try out new stuff. But at least, well, you don't have to if you don't want to. We want to try out new stuff, and so I think on this record we try to kind of like push our sounds a little bit like in different directions to see like, okay, what if we kind of like bend it this way? What'll then happen if we introduce this kind of element and stuff like that? So it's still very much us, but we still try out new stuff, I guess.
What has been the biggest growth for Cabal as a band that maybe this album shines a much bigger light on it than the previous records did?
Can you? I'm not sure. I know what you mean.
like musically, where do you see the growth of the band represented on this album? What area of the band sound-wise have you guys grown the most?
I feel like the electronic parts, I feel like we at least spend a lot more time on this time around, and kind of like giving them like they've always been a part of our music, but I feel like we kind of used them differently. On the old records, we would always use them to create ambience, which we also do this time, but we also use them a bit more I want to say as a weapon, kind of like more aggressively. Have like incorporated like straight up noise into some of our songs, which I kind of like. It's a way to make our music more aggressive without playing slower or faster necessarily.
Do you look at Cabal as a band now after 3 records, and with you always pushing the envelope and adding new elements with each record, do you feel like the sound of the band and the band itself is still not where it's going to be, like, or perhaps will never be? Are you guys going to be one of those bands that are you always looking at what the next sound could be like?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the way I feel now, that might change. I don't know what happens in the future, but the way I see it now is like I wouldn't like to make the same record again. Like, to me, like as a creative person, that will kind of be, I don't know, unfulfilling. Like, I feel like we have our base sound now, and now the thing is like this, we're gonna try to twist and bend it into different things and see what happens. But I definitely don't want to make a Magno Interitus Part 2. I don't want to make a Drag Me Down Part 2 or Mark of Rod Part 2.
Yeah, you're always looking forward, not necessarily looking backwards.
Yeah.
Was this a challenging record for you guys to make?
A little bit. I always think it kind of is, because I feel like in the band we are all our own worst critics. So there's a lot of like kind of being like, do you know I don't know if it's something we just use, but the term called demotitis?
I've never heard that before.
Okay, I don't know if we came up with it. I don't want to take credit for it if we heard it somewhere else, but the term is like demotitis is when you listen to like your own demos that's so much that you end up not liking it because you just listen to it too much. So I feel like we kind of like fight that a lot, because we write something and then we'll keep listening to it to see if like, okay, is there something we want to change? And then after a while, you'll end up just not liking it because you heard it too much. Yeah.
Do you then prefer to have more time to work on an album or less time to work on an album? Because more time means more time for you to listen to those demos and go through it over and over again.
Yeah, so I think we found out that actually giving ourselves deadlines is pretty useful, because we will keep changing things, keep going back to things and be like, I don't like this anymore. And even though it might have been perfect from the start, but we just, now I've listened to it 100 times and it doesn't do anything for me anymore. So I think like being like, okay, it has to be done in like a year, then you'll kind of like be at some reach a point where like, okay, I don't have the time to like work more on this, so I'll just leave it. And I think that's very healthy for someone like us who can be kind of like obsessive with what we do.
The design of the record, I have to ask you this, because the second half of the album felt bigger to me than the first half of the album. It felt more controlled, it felt bigger. The album has this growth to it, but it definitely feels like two different portions of the same album, or two different sides of the same coin. Did that come from the time frame in which the songs were created, or do you guys created that movement that the album has on purpose?
Yeah, we always try to, like, every time we have like, I can't really remember which songs were written first. I don't think that's chronologically on the record. I'm pretty sure it isn't. So what we do is, like, once we have the songs we feel like we need for the record, everybody will kind of like pitch in with like a way to like an order, and everybody will be like, okay, let's try out this order and listen to it. Okay, does this kind of like flow? Does this make sense? And kind of like as a listening experience. So we very like purposefully tried to put it together in a way where we kind of like, it would hopefully keep you engaged while listening to it.
Yeah, and then in the middle of the record, you guys threw in Blood Af Meat, a song
Yeah.
that is very different from everything before, everything that comes. I mean, this song is very unique.
Yeah.
What was what was the idea behind it, creating a song that different from everything else on the album?
We wanted to do something different, and I happen to know this producer duo called John Connor, which I do some vocals for. It's kind of like a side project, and they're actually like half of the band called LLNN, Danish like post-hardcore band that's really worth checking out. If you like stuff that's even heavier than us, then you should absolutely check out LLNN. Worst name to pronounce, but one of the best bands we have back here. And so they really know their way around like industrial noise and electronics. So we're like, okay, what would happen if we like gave them the stems for one of our tracks and be like, hey, do something with this? And we hoped it would be very like weird and different, and it really was. So it's perfect.
It really was. And once you had that song, you guys put it right in the middle of the record. Was that to break the album, in order to give you like that sense of side A and side B? Why in the middle of the record?
We thought it was just it's kind of like, I feel like it was kind of like a big surprise on the album that we kind of like would try something like that out. So we felt like it would be kind of fitting to put that in the middle to kind of divide it. Like, it would be weird to start out on that. It would also be kind of weird to close on it. So I thought like the middle spot is like, I thoughts at the time, I'm pretty sure, were like something along the lines like, if people start getting bored like halfway through, they probably won't be when we throw in this song and see like
yeah, that song is completely like different, and it almost works as a reset for the album, because you're listening to the record and then this one hits and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here? And that almost reignites your attention for the rest of the album. So I honestly feel like it's the best spot for it.
I'm happy it worked, because our idea was, again, like, if you're kind of like snoozing halfway through, this will wake you up.
I think it's kind of hard to snooze listening to Cabal, but okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Some people are heavy sleepers, man. So
I think it's impossible to fall asleep listening to this record. I mean, it smacks you in the face from the beginning all the way to the end. So I don't think anybody's going to fall asleep listening to it. But that song is really important, because I honestly felt like the album needed something to kind of give you like I said, a reset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that you can almost forget about what you've heard and then get ready for what's coming afterwards.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I also feel like we're more into like the weird electronic territory, like after so at least like the noisy parts of it.
so is that something we're going to see more from you guys?
I think so. Like, to me it was kind of like, oh shit, this kind of works. I kind of like this. So if I get my like will, what is that to say? Like if I have it my way, I think we're gonna introduce a bit more of stuff like that in the future. Not like I'm not sure how it will work out, but I think like I'm really intrigued by doing this also because I feel like it's not something I've heard before personally, like in our little niche.
No, it was really interesting because it worked really well for you guys, but it sounded very different from the sound that you guys have done before. And that takes me to my next point. You said this already, that you don't want a record to repeat itself. You want every album to be its own album and its own experience. So now with 3 records under your belt, you're looking at Cabal as a band. How you defined the sound of the band? Because the sound is so different across all 3 records.
Uh, I'm not sure. Like I think there was somebody after Drag Me Down who coined us as like post deathcore, which I kind of like because it's kind of like our base would probably be like some deathcore-ish stuff, and then we add all of these things into the mix and see what happens. So I feel like that was a post deathcore is kind of like my favorite term so far.
Industrial post deathcore.
Deathcore. Yeah, I think that's a good term. Like,
You can just keep adding things into it,
yeah,
creating your
blackened
own genre.
industrial post deathcore.
Yeah. And then you have Mr. Joe Bad on one of the tracks.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Joe. I'm a big fan of his vocals. How did that partnership come along?
Yeah, it happened because we're big fans as well. I love Fit for an Autopsy. And I just shot him a message on Instagram. I was like, hey, Joe, I really like your music. Do you want to be on a song? It's like, yeah. It's like, that's kind of
That
like
easy.
that's how basically most of our partnerships has been. Just me shooting somebody an Instagram message, sending a song and be like, do you want to be on this? And be like, either yes or no.
Wow, it was that easy. That easy. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did it work? Did you create the parts for him? Did he have free reign in order to do the lyrical content for his parts? How does it work?
Usually what we'll do is I'll write all the lyrics and I record the part, and then I'll send it to him and be like, hey, this is how I imagined it. You feel free to do it like just as I did, or do your own thing. Like, and I think he changed up a little bit of like the way the vocal is, but it's pretty close to what I wrote. So that's just the thing. Like, with if they do it the way I wrote it, I like it because I wrote it. If they do it their own way, I'll probably be happy because all people who collaborate are really good musicians. So it's kind of like I feel like it can't really go wrong. So.
No, you can't go wrong. Outside of Joe, maybe looking forward into the next record, is there somebody out there that you haven't collaborated with that you would love to work with on an album?
Yes, there's so many people. I feel
The
like
list is long.
yeah, this is so long. That's like one of the things I really like about kind of like gaining a footing in music is just I now get to collaborate with people who make stuff I really like. So that's one of like the coolest parts about doing this to me. Is like these people whose music some people like Matt Heavy, for example, the last record, I've been listening to him since I was a teen. And all of a sudden we did a song with him, and that was like mind blowing to me. So I'm always like trying to figure out, okay, who can we get on the record? Who would be cool to collaborate with? I think my top pick for the next record would probably be someone like Ghost Main or something like that.
Well, I didn't see that coming, but
Fingers crossed.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you. As a vocalist, when you look at your own personal development as a vocalist in the band, what do you feel has been the key component for your development? Has it been working on these 3 records that you guys have released, touring, playing live? Where do you see the catalyst for your own personal development being?
I think it's a combination of the whole thing. I'm better in the studio now than I was when we started out because I've recorded 3 albums since we started out. So obviously I have more experience. I'm better on stage now than when we started out because I've played so many more shows. So I feel like it's just a combination of getting like just want to say like getting the hours in. Kind of like it. The more you do a thing, the better you'll probably be at it. So I feel like for all of us in the band, we are just better at everything we do now because we've done it more.
Was there a track on this album that was a little bit more challenging for you vocally?
I think Blood and Meat was probably because there's like the middle section where I had to do some weird talky stuff, which I was like at first, I don't know if my voice sounds weird because I'm used to just fucking screaming. So I think it turned out all right, but trying that, I feel kind of out of my comfort zone doing that just because it's not something I usually do. And there's also some screams in the electronic parts where I purposefully kind of like push my voice way more than I usually would. So it gets this weird overtone of almost sounds like it's almost breaking, which is it kind of was. It was kind of like fun to see, okay, well, what will happen if I just like abandon all technique and just like scream like I would scream if I like got really hurt or something.
Wow. Do you look at your vocal performance on a record by record basis, or you look at more as a continuous line of improvement and you keep adding and building blocks from one to the other?
I would say kind of like a continuous improvement. Like I don't think I've changed that much since the last record, but the thing that there's like a few additions like the ones I just talked about. But what has changed is just I feel more secure at doing what I do now. Like obviously I have more experience now because we played a ton of shows since then and just recorded more. So
yeah, you felt, to me, you felt a little bit more, I mean, this is going to sound really weird, but you felt a little bit more controlled, even though that the vocals were out there, like you're really pushing the boundaries, but you felt like you were in control of that. It wasn't like panicking. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if it felt like you had a little bit more control of where you wanted to go with your range on this record compared to the previous record.
Yeah. I feel like also on the previous record, I was purposely trying to be a little more unhinged with some of the things. And I feel like now I'm just like, maybe I feel like I work better when I try to control it more, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a realization where I'm like, I think it's better if I just keep focus on control.
Is there a song on this album that you're looking forward to playing live above all others?
I feel like most of them I'm really excited to play. That's kind of like I'm one of those guys where I like doing music, I like doing everything around the band, but I'm ultimately I'm doing it so I can get on stage and do the thing I really like, which is playing cool shows. I feel like Vultures is the song I'm really excited to play live just because it has like a breakdown with a really cool call out I'm excited to do.
Are you guys going to put more of this album when you guys hit the road and start playing live shows? Is this album going to be the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the set list?
Yeah, it definitely will. It's like we'll probably play a few songs for everybody like who been following from the start, but like these runs we're doing now is kind of like to promote this album, so it makes sense to play most songs from that. And I'm really sorry if there's somebody out there who only likes the old stuff, but that shit also gets super boring. Like once you play the song for like 1,000 times, it's not as fun to play anymore.
Yeah, especially when you have new material.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to, honestly, if it was up to me, I'll just play the new stuff. But I'm also very aware that sometimes I remember that when I was like, I still do, like if I go to a show with a band that has like a really cool back catalog and they don't play any of the old songs that I like, I'm like feel a little bummed. So I'm like, we are aware that people might also
Yeah, so don't be that guy.
No, exactly. We're not gonna be those guys.
You can't be that guy. Like you're hating on those guys and you're gonna be those guys. Don't be those guys. You gotta be better. You gotta be better.
I can be a hypocrite.
I love it. I want them to play what I want, but I'm gonna play what I want.
Exactly. It's all about me.
That's what it comes down to. It's all about you.
I'm the center of the universe.
I love that. I love that. Now that the album is out and people have had a chance to listen to it, what has the feedback from the fans been like?
It's been really good. It's been I don't maybe like kind of overwhelming, or I always have this thing where I'm always super anxious in the week before we release it, because I'll get in my own head and be like, oh, what if everybody hates it? But even though the responses for the singles has been really good, so I don't know why it would change. but I'm always, every time we put it out, and like everybody is like, the response every time so far has been like, oh, this is really good, this is your best stuff. I'm like, whew. I'm glad I didn't disappoint everyone. Like,
But
it's
at the
kind of
end of the
like,
day, if you're doing it just for you, it doesn't really matter what other people think.
no, that is very true, and that's like what I usually tell myself. So I'm honestly not doing it for anybody else. I am doing it because I like doing it. But at the same time, I also like when people tell me I did good. So
Yeah,
but,
I mean, it's part of being an artist, right? Like, I mean, it's
yeah,
fun to do things that you want to do, but at the same time, you want some validation from the other people that what you're
yeah,
doing is worth doing. So I get it.
yeah. That's also the thing. Like I am a fan of music first and foremost myself. So I also know what it feels like if an album, like a band you really like, puts out an album you don't like. It's fucking bummer, and I don't want to like put the people who listen to our music through that. Like, I kind of like, there's also the part of me that's, I'm really happy that everybody's supporting what we do and listening to it. So I'm also like, I really want you to enjoy this, because I want everybody to have a good experience with it.
Yeah,
Does
it
that
makes
make
sense.
sense? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it makes sense. Last time I saw you guys play live was back in 2020, early 2020, before the pandemic
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
happened. I saw you guys playing in Toronto at the Rock Pile. When are you guys coming back to North America?
Hopefully next year. We're working hard with our booker to find like the right tour and stuff like that, because the idea is we want to tour as much as fucking possible, like the next handful of years, just because we kind of like lost out on a whole album cycle. Uh, with Drag Me Down, because yeah, as you just mentioned, the pandemic. So we released that album and just sat at home for like 2 years. So now we kind of also feel like we have some catching up to do. Like, we need to get out there and grind and like play as many shows as humanly possible within the next few years.
So are you guys hitting the road still this year in Europe?
Yeah, we're doing the Never Say Die tour, and in a bit more than a week we'll head out with Suicide Silence, After the Burial, Currents, Spite, Invent, Animate, and Boundaries.
Wow, big lineup.
Yeah, it's a sick lineup. I'm super excited about that. I used to go to the Never Say Die tour when I was a teen and catch like Parkway Drive and all those bands who were playing it back then. So getting to be a part of it, it's actually the second year in a row for us now. We did like the Corona version that got canceled halfway through due to more Corona last year, but now we get to do the real thing, which is amazing.
And
we
then,
have
then you're looking at the US early 2023, like spring
yeah
of 2023?
hopefully we are going out with Dying Fetus for a run as well in the Europe and the UK in February.
Oh wow.
And then we're really sick to hopefully get something in the US in spring or summer, or like ideally we would tour over there. Like, if I get my way, it'd be like 2 to 3 tours next year in the US.
Oh, that would be amazing. I would love to
Yeah.
see you guys again. Like, I mean, I saw you guys, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, man.
It's like such a long time ago. It was a great show. And
Thank you.
and I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys playing in Toronto again and seeing you guys touring in North America again.
Yeah,
Andreas, thank you very much for your time today, man. You're always the best. I love
thank
what you
you.
do, and I love the band. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. I'll see you on the road. I'll see you in North America next year.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Yep. See you, man. Take
Yeah.
care.
See you. Have a good one.